Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to catch up with Chris Smythers, President and CEO at Merchants Grocery Company. You know, this is a really interesting industry that Chris's company serves. This is the convenience distributors industry. And these are the folks that sell products, a wholesaler that sells products into convenience stores primarily. And this is kind of a different niche for me being, I grew up in the construction supply industry. And so again, one of the greatest things about my job over the last 20 years is learning all these really interesting niches, how people make money in the wholesale business and things that you just stumble upon. So one of the things that I was exposed to early on, and this is going back in, I think it was 2005 when I first started getting involved with this industry, is how challenged they are from a margin standpoint. I'll let you listen to, Chris share, approximately what their margins are. But let's just say that they're incredibly tight from wholesale standards. What they have to do to manage these companies and to really be optimized so that they actually can make a nickel at the end of the day is pretty fascinating. And they're also working with just this wide variety of products that all have their own unique challenges, but also the customers they serve all have a little bit of nuance to them as well. So Chris has weathered this storm. He's had a very interesting journey along the way and just thoroughly enjoyed speaking with him about it. And I hope you enjoy this episode. This episode was brought to you by my friends at Supply Mover, the AI-powered CRM solution built for distribution. As most of you know, I'm incredibly fascinated by the potential of artificial intelligence tools. I've been experimenting with them since the media frenzy surrounding ChatGPT came out. It was around this time I was introduced to Supply Mover and their CEO, Chris Van Edersum. I had Chris on the show a while back, and I really resonated with his take on the inefficiency of distribution sales. Supply Mover is a fully integrated solution that brings together data from your ERP, e-commerce, and sales enablement systems. This is the one-stop shop for driving a more efficient sales process. You can request a demo at www.supplymover.com. That's SUPPLYMOVER.com. And let them know that you heard about their solution on the Distribution Talk podcast. Well, hey, Chris, thanks for coming on Distribution Talk. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely, Jason. This is exciting. First time I've ever done a podcast, so I'm excited and a little bit nervous, have to be honest.
Oh, you'll do great, man. In conversations with you in the past and us meeting back in Houston, no, you're going to be just fine on this thing. So, as I shared with you before, one of the things I love to get, and really one of the big reasons I started this show was I love to hear people's background. What is your distribution journey and how did you get started in the business? So if you wouldn't mind, give us a little history lesson.
Okay. Yeah, it's it's a long story, but I'll try to shorten it up for you. Basically, I've been in the business since I was a little kid. My dad ran the company since 1973. He was asked to come up and run the wholesale distribution company from Kraft Foods, where he used to work. And so he had some experience and some background with wholesale. So we moved up here to Culpeper, Virginia. And as a kid, I was running around the warehouse, climbing all over the boxes and riding down conveyors and all that kind of fun stuff. So that was my first introduction to the wholesale business. And then from there, I never planned, honestly, to come back into the business. I had gone to school for graphic design. I was actually going to be an animator. I had big dreams of, going to be a famous Hollywood animator and make these animated movies and all this fun stuff. And it just didn't work out, and life takes you in different directions sometimes. And, sometimes you just have to go with it and accept that that's what's supposed to happen. So I came out of college and actually started at the company doing graphics and marketing for the company. I really love this industry, and so I enjoyed working with the people. I had already been around the company working during the summers in the warehouse, riding with drivers, doing odds and ends type stuff. I don't get credit for that right now. So I only get the credit when I started full time after college in 1995. But when I got going, I was like thinking that I would be here for a little bit. Then it kept going, years went by. And, you just kind of like sink in and it kind of gets in your blood in the distribution business. And so I stuck with it. My dad put me in different positions over the years and I learned a lot about the business and I worked a lot with sales. I was in the merchandising, marketing, worked in the warehouse operations quite a bit. So I came pretty familiar with that and eventually got into the position of vice president of operations where I oversaw the warehouse and transportation. So from there, I actually had left the company for a couple of years thinking, okay, I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. I'm not supposed to be in the wholesale business. I think, I was struggling at that age to find myself and find what I really wanted to do. And it was good for me. I left for a couple of years. Things did not work out the way I thought they would. And when I came back, there had been some personnel changes, which I was in favor of. So when I came back, I had much more of a focus, determination of, okay, I really want to work in this business and be with Dad. And if I am the successor to his position, then it will come. And so I was much more passionate about it when I came back. So I think it was a good thing. And then from there, Dad and I kind of started down a path and of successorship. And he basically would tell me every 2 years that he was going to retire in 2 years. That lasted about 10 years.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so we joke around a lot about that in our family. But, timing is everything. So in 2014, he retired and I took over, and the rest is history. There's some stories in between now and then, but we can get into that in a minute.
Sure. We'll dive into those. But I want to jump back to a couple things I heard. One thing, you had looked at that animation, and you were coming out and you graduated a few years after I did. And I can remember, I mean, that's kind of actually the golden age, in my opinion, golden age of graphic design. I mean, this is when the tools, came out of Apple.
Yeah.
It's like, man, all of a sudden, we can scan things, we can manipulate. I think that really, I can see why you were attracted to it because that was a great time
It
in
was.
that you no longer had to send it off to some, big publishing house. You actually could get in the self-publishing business and, you could do a lot of stuff yourself. So I can see why you were attracted to that.
Oh, I was. And I mean, anybody that's watched Jurassic Park and some of the movies that were from that time
Yeah.
period were very fascinated by how they did the animation.
Yeah.
And that's really what was attractive to me is all the dynamics and the different tools that they were coming out with. It was amazing what they were doing, even back then.
Yeah, I remember this friend of mine, she came out of school about the same time I did, and she was in graphic design. And, she went right down to Los Angeles and she got involved with the music business and got involved with doing some of the animation creativity around music videos at the time. And it's
cool.
like, wow,
Yeah.
that was kind of
Yeah.
a neat deal. So, no, I can see that. And I think it kind of sounds like, that you pulled a lot of that creativity into the marketing side of that organization when you came in. So perhaps maybe that was the kind of that first passion coming in.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a lot of lessons that I learned, going to college. I think college, serves a couple of purposes. The education is great, but also, getting out there into the world and becoming who you are and independent of your parents. We talked about it many years because when I was first started in the business, I was always Elvin Smythers' son. I was never
Yeah.
Chris Smythers. I was Elvin
Right.
Smythers' son.
Yeah, sure.
And, I never realized what that really meant until later on. And, I'm very honored to, have a father like I have, and he's very respected in the industry. And I see very clearly now some things I did not see clearly then. So a lot of good lessons. Yeah.
They get a whole lot smarter as we get older, don't they?
I hope so. I hope so.
I look at my dad. I was telling him actually this weekend. I was like, man, there was some stuff I thought you were out of your mind, and it's like, as I get a little older, I'm like, man, you're a whole lot smarter than I thought you were.
Yeah.
So
Amen to that. Sure.
yeah. Oh, that's funny. So you went through, you did, some of the operational stuff, and you got a chance to see that. But tell me a little bit more about your leaving, your time out. Can you give me an idea of roughly how old you were at this time?
I was probably around 30, 31.
It's interesting. I kind of thought you were going to say that because, I left my family business at 33.
Yeah,
And there is an interesting dynamic that occurs right in that early 30s for a lot of next generationers and, young men in general, that it's a weird time, where you're
it
trying to
is.
figure out who you are
Absolutely.
and do I want to go down this path? It's like this path was laid out for me. Is this the right path for me? So there's a lot of questioning that occurs right at that age.
It does. And I think, to me, you really kind of figure it out between 32 and 35 as far as where you're going to focus because you start to panic like around 29 and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be 30. I'm so old. It's going to be too late to do anything else. And
Right.
you put all this stuff in your own head when really in reality, you have plenty of time. I think that people should never close any doors and be open-minded about what the future can bring because you just never know where you're going to end up.
It is interesting that you're right. You do think I have to make my mark. I have to have it all figured out by 30. And I'll tell you, if I look back, my mindset at 30 or 32, it was a jumbled mess. I mean, it was absolutely a mess at that point.
Oh yeah.
And, and the things I've learned, since that point, now, 20 plus years, after that fact, it is amazing. I had my second career, begin, in the consulting side and the speaking side, really at about that age. And I'm glad you brought that up because it is just so fascinating when I talk to, people that have gone through their career and right around that early 30s is that pivotal change, that turning point.
Sure is. Yeah.
Now, did you leave and did you go into a completely different career? Did you just take a couple gap years there or what?
When I look back at it, I was like, man, that was crazy. But basically, I left originally, went down to Durham, North Carolina, and worked with my brother and was doing some graphics. He had his own company at the software design and things like that. So I was trying to break back into the graphics, and then that didn't work out. Actually, I put my house up for sale and everything, and went down there. Was going down there on the weekdays, coming back on the weekends. And it just didn't happen. And I was like, okay, well, this is meant to be. So I came back home and started a graphics company with a buddy of mine that had been doing graphic design for a while. And it was right in a period of time when people were shutting down like expenses on marketing and graphics. And so we got odd and end jobs here and there, but I was really not comfortable. I'm a very conservative type person. I don't like high risk. I like stability. And so I was like, man, I got to do something different. So I came back, talked to my dad, and he of course welcomes me back. He's always been very supportive on any decisions that I've made, and has always been behind me. So that was good. And when like I said, when I came back, I was much more focused.
It's interesting that you said, a lot of people ask me, when I left the family business, oh, was this a big, did you have a huge rift with your father? Did you really, have a and like, no, he actually was very supportive of the decision that, I made. And frankly, helped support me, as I transitioned into this career, so, it doesn't, I think they're all looking for the drama, they're looking for the big blowout. There was no big blowout. It was that this was a decision I needed to make. And this was a discovery in my life that needed to happen. And so, my family was incredibly supportive, of this. And, maybe that was okay. Let's get this guy out of the family business. But I try to think of it in the positive that they really wanted me just to kind of pursue what I was looking for in my life. So
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about the company, and what you all do. But then we can dive into some of the nuances of the convenience world. So.
Well, Merchants Grocery Company, we're 105 years old. So it's been around for quite a long time and has evolved over the years. But we're kind of a hybrid distribution, convenience store distributor, food service distributor. So we've kind of blended both of those worlds into what we do. and have been doing that for quite some time. Our primary customers are convenience stores.
Mm-hmm.
So we sell a lot of tobacco and cigarettes, and that is a big percentage of the revenues in our business, in our industry, of course, in the convenience stores as well. So we have a warehouse. We buy products directly from the manufacturers or through redistribution, and we stock them, and then the customers place orders and we ship them out. And we have other services like merchandising and food service specialists and things like that. But we try to make relationships with our customers and strong bonds, and we want to partner with them, try to help them succeed and give them ideas and opportunities to make additional profits and bring back value to their businesses.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about that convenience store market, I was having this conversation with my father about just if you look at the fuel side, typically they're attached, they have pumps and whatnot, and there's really no margin in that. I mean, it's a very, very thin margin on the selling of fuel. Taxation just absolutely kills them on that. But then, so everybody has a C-store, and that's where those owners want to make all their money. But those are tight margins too. It's not like they're, that's
Yes.
not a big margin play there. And I started, we were talking about pricing. We were kind of laughing. I'm like, okay, wait. So if you say that power bar should now go from $2.79 to $2.89, is the consumer actually going to walk away? Probably not. It's a convenience.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that there is some tolerance for convenience. The price is inconvenience, but people do pay attention. And if there's significant price increases, they may do a little
They might
shopping.
question it, sure.
Yeah, they may do a little shopping, but I don't think it's as prevalent as what you would see if somebody's grocery shopping.
Right, exactly. No, I completely agree with you. And this is where I almost want to grab a couple of the owners of these places and wring them by the neck and say, guys, you can do better than this. I think you're too much looking at the other guy down the street. That's what I think is happening. Yeah. But anyway, I digress on them. Again, some of the nuances, though, with that, the wholesale business that you all deal with. I mean, this was a shocker to me. When I met, when I started, spending time, and the first time I spoke at a Convenience Distributors Association event, this is back in 2005. These folks are telling me that, you have, mid-single digit gross margins. I'm thinking, oh, this is a scary, this is a scary business. You don't have a whole lot of room to screw up on this one.
It's a very skinny margin, and you don't have a whole lot of room to wiggle around. Not a lot of cash left over to invest. You have to really manage it very tight, and everything counts.
Yeah. Well, a good mistake in that warehouse or in delivery can wipe out your profit, your net for the month. I mean, that can just really quick like that. So you all have to be on your game.
Yeah, and I think all of us are very efficient. It's just the margins are so thin is where we have to figure it out going into the future. With some of the sales, the categories are shrinking and in sales. And then, of course, food services is rising up to the top. And so we have to adapt and move around and shake it up some from what we've done historically to make sure that we can survive.
So the food service, is that more the ready-made foods that you see in convenience stores and that type of thing? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, you have, you have pre-made type stuff that's in the deli case. You have made to order, like you have in a Subway or whatever your program is. Pizza that's prepared and you just grab it and go. All kinds of different foods. You got chicken programs and so when people go to a convenience store now, the expectations are that there could be quality food there. And that wasn't the case several years back. People would kind of be like, oh, I'm not going to stop at that convenience store and get food. But, it's definitely changed. They're more like almost like a quick serve restaurant, a QSR that sells gas.
Yeah.
So it's like a combination of the two. And that's where most of the larger chains in the United States are moving towards that type of model.
Interesting. No, I absolutely agree with you. That makes a lot of sense. And I've noticed that over the years that, there was, I'm not going to eat there, no, I don't eat there. That is where I, fuel up or I am getting, very simple sundries, but absolutely not going down that trail. That's interesting. Going back to some of these thinner margins, that means that you all have to rely on technology pretty substantially in those in your warehouse and in your delivery mechanisms as well.
It's definitely way beyond where it was. We're still not going to keep up with some of the larger businesses that have larger margins where they can invest more. We normally come in behind on the tail end of things, but yes, we do depend on things like scanning and the picking
Yeah.
for better accuracy, inventory control through software systems, warehouse management systems, scanning at the point of delivery, ordering devices, the compute, everything that has automated somewhat some of the functions we used to do manually.
So I'm thinking more of the convenience buyer, the buyer side, your customers out there.
Yes.
Um, how sophisticated are they from a technology standpoint in their buying side? Or are you all really providing that almost a pre-made list of, here's what you need? Are you all kind of doing a vendor managed inventory for them?
Most wholesalers like us, we basically tag the store. So we set the store in the convenience store and set all the products, and then we have a tag in front of that product, or they can scan the UPC on the product in most cases. And they have a little ordering device, whether it's like an all-in-one Windows-based computer or just a dummy scanner device that will cradle in and send it over the internet. But those tools basically allow them just to walk the store or scan barcodes on an order guide or something that we made specifically for them. So we do have lots of different methods for them to place their orders. And the system also will allow them to see like par levels or order history on what they've been doing. So if you have a new manager, that comes in, they don't have to start totally from scratch. They can, view history and get some data there to support their decisions.
Those managers, new manager, I'm glad you brought that up. Is that an education area that you all provide? I mean, are you training those new managers, or is the owner or the corporate entity, are they training them?
We would train them only to do the tools that deal with us. We wouldn't be training them, of course, to manage the store or anything, but we would train them on how we do things, their ordering device, the way we come in and merchandise and things like that. We have regular salespeople and region managers that'll call on those accounts and make sure that they're up to speed on whatever technology that we're using.
Seems like there is a fair amount of expense associated, because I would suspect there's a bit of turnover in the customers
Yes.
in your C stores there. That education, I mean, there is a cost associated with that from your side.
Sure. I mean, it's not too complicated. So, we're pretty good at going in and following up until they are comfortable with the process. And we have so many people that touch the customers. So hopefully we're giving plenty of support to them so that they don't have to struggle or have time gaps in between that training.
You know, let's go, just going back to kind of talking about some of the different products that you get into. I mean, as we said, you've got some very, low, tight margins on a lot of these products. I mean,
Yes.
and I know that some of the traditional things that you sold, tobacco is a very, traditional thing that I see in that CDA market. And
Yes.
there's not a whole lot of margin in tobacco, is there?
There's not, and there's a lot of regulations. So, those two things combined make it difficult. And it's just gotten more so over the years with taxation and the different stamps and localities, depending on what state you're in and what you're dealing with on the state and the municipal side. Virginia has both the state has a stamp and also cities. So we have probably roughly 120 localities that we stamp for, and those are the cities on top of the state. And it's a difficult thing to keep up with. There's a lot of reporting. We have a machine that applies the stamp and an operator, so there's mistakes that happen. So it gets into a lot of detail when it comes to cigarettes and tobacco.
I'll tell you, again, that was one of those aha moments back in '05, when I was sitting at this round table and some of the members were sharing, some of their war stories and the biggest challenges they deal with. And it was the tobacco stamp side of it. It
Oh
was,
yeah.
they were kind of laughing and say, well, hey, man, if you got a solution for the tobacco stamp thing, man, we're all ears. I'm like, well, tell me about this. And the way they described it at this point was that, you get your product in from that manufacturer, whether RJR, whoever it is, at that, bring it in, you open the carton, you stamp this thing with the machine that you talk about. It gets cartoned back up, goes to the store, wherever you're going to set, and then whatever's not sold comes back to you. And now you got to go try to recoup your money on these tax stamps that you've already paid for. Is that still the case?
That's close.
Okay, close. All right, close.
Yeah.
All right.
There's not a whole lot of cigarettes that come back anymore. It used to be we would give credit on cigarettes that didn't sell or that went stale or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of changes to that. But yes, if it comes back though with a stamp, we do have to report it to where we try to reclaim, give the customer credit for that tax stamp and also get our credit for that tax stamps because they're very expensive.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that was one of the big things they talked about, the labor, not only putting it on, but then trying to recover that money. By that time, we don't make any money. We lost money on this whole shooting match there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the reverse logistics don't work out too well.
No, definitely not in your business. And
Yeah.
Speaking of logistics, I mean, you and I talked previously about how expensive that transportation is becoming in your,
Yes.
in fact, it's probably becoming one of the most expensive from a labor side, going forward. So could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Everybody's aware that there's been a driver shortage for years. This actually goes back pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And the labor shortage actually was getting worse before COVID as well. And then COVID, of course, exacerbated that issue with the quarantines and people collecting money and staying home and different things that would prevent them from coming to work. So we struggled a little bit through that, but the transportation really there's a couple of I'd say three major factors right now that we're dealing with, and that is, finding drivers with a good driving record. We have different class drivers, so it allows us a little bit more flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're
Mm-hmm.
hiring just class A's, it's a difficult, and you're paying
Sure.
a lot more than you were 5 years ago. So the cost of labor for many has gone up 25+% in just 1 year. Then you're dealing with the equipment, the truck cost you've got several things going on there. The supply chain is slow. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
wait quite a long time to get a truck built.
Mm-hmm.
The parts might be that total hang up on the whole truck. The expense of the truck is going up significantly because there's new emission rules. Of course, labor for them has gone skyrocket. So everything is going up. In some cases, going up to double of what the cost was before. So for wholesalers, we're looking at significant increases in our expenses. And the question becomes, how do you handle that? And then on top of that, you've got DEF, the fluids, and then you've got also the diesel fuel. And we know what that's done over the last couple of years. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of changes and things that have spiked up the expenses.
And again, going back to the margin issue, not a whole lot of wiggle room here to absorb those new costs that are coming into the business.
I guess the good news from what has happened through the supply chain issues and labor changes is that people know that price of products are going to go up. It's the absolute only way that this is going to get recouped. Sometimes you could have absorbed some of these type of expense increases, but this is so significant that it's had a major trickle down effect, of course, and everybody's felt it with inflation and the cost of getting anything, equipment, food, you name it. It's all feeling it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I think, again, when you had shared that before, and you and I talked a little bit about the different types of driver routing, and transportation routing is possibly a way to alleviate some of this, to again, make it a little more efficient so that you're getting at least the best bang for your buck,
Yes.
On that last mile.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is the toughest thing out there. So
it is. And it's a fine balance of, trying to keep the customers happy with their delivery times, running an efficient route, keeping your hours down to the Department of Transportation rules. There's lots of factors that go into routing, and it's definitely, it can make huge differences, but it's difficult to manage.
Sure. No, absolutely. You're learning a whole new set of disciplines is really what's going on. And,
Yeah.
those are things that now distributors tend to be very good at being able to pivot and move and take on it. And I do appreciate that about the industry, we serve, but it doesn't make it any easier. It's
Yeah,
a constant change, and
it
we have to
is.
be willing to adapt to that change going forward.
I think you're exactly right. We are fairly nimble.
Hmm.
We can move and shift when we need to.
Yeah. So, going back to some of the products, we talked about tobacco, and that's tough for one.
Yes.
And let's face it, when I was at that show, I mean, it was candy galore. There's candy and jerky. One of the greatest
Yeah.
shows. Actually, it's a terrible show if you're on a diet, but it's a great show. It's a fun show to be at. But there's some emerging products that might do something to help you with those margins. I mean, and to maybe slightly move the needle. I know, cannabis supplements, those types of things have started to come into your world. Can you talk a little bit about where that's going?
I'm not an expert by any means, but we've kind of seen this in the past when vapors and e-cigarettes
Mm-hmm.
entered the market. The margins were pretty significant, and as a wholesaler, anything over 15%, we're getting pretty excited.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
So, we were really excited about that category, and we benefited from that. And then over time, those margins have gotten eroded with, the pricing on the market. We're seeing some of that in some of the alternative items. I mean, there's so many things that are out there right now that are kind of unclear as far as what's legal, what's not legal.
Absolutely.
Is it legal in Virginia but not legal in West Virginia? Those type of
Mm-hmm.
questions. So, a lot of that we stay away from as our company looks to the future. We're more concerned that if it's at all, concerning, we probably would stay away until we're for sure what's going to happen in the state of Virginia.
Yeah, I think that, with cannabis in general, you cannot cross state lines with that. And so if you're trying to move product, as you said, to West Virginia, that's not okay. And so it's difficult to work with products that you can't move from, one location. You cannot use your distribution network efficiently.
No, and I think with cannabis, what's interesting is it's probably not going to evolve to the point where there's going to be distribution through us until it's federally legal. And then we're going to really see, hopefully, there's going to be some structure to the distribution process when it comes to cannabis. I'm not even very familiar with some of the distribution that happens in some of the states like Colorado, but I know that it's a very different model from what we do currently in convenience stores. So that'll be interesting to see it evolve. I know our CDA is staying in tune to that and
Absolutely.
abreast of those changes.
In some of the conversations I've had with the association, they've talked about, really looking at this and trying to help those members who are interested in pursuing that path. And, last year I had a cannabis wholesaler on the show, and she kind of told me the whole all the hoops that they have to deal with. So I'm going to say, Chris, by staying out of this thing, you're probably in better shape. I mean, this is not, this is a weird one to play in. It's funny. I was talking about this with someone recently that if you're a cannabis wholesaler, you cannot deduct certain business expenses that we all have grown to know and love. Even to the fact payroll, you cannot deduct that. And that is a massive operating expense that, what do you mean you can't deduct payroll? That's crazy. So I think it is a challenge. It's one that you're right. Once it becomes federally, legal, then you all can look at it and decide whether it's a good met. But there are supplements. There are some interesting, different things that you all can get into. So
a lot of wholesalers are selling those type of items like Kratom and different things that are on the market. The clarity of what's legal and what's not is concerning to us, and we're pretty conservative as a company. We tend to sit back and watch and wait, and we probably are losing out on some of those margins. However, we feel more comfortable with that kind of approach to the situation. So
I don't blame you, because I'm telling you, a legal bill, that's not going to serve your bottom line very well.
No, and you could be stuck with product or something, and inventory dollars. We've had that happen in the past, and
Sure.
so we tend to be, conservative.
If I could shift here, I want to talk a little bit about your industry involvement. I mean, we've talked about, CDA and the association, but this is something that you have spent time with. I mean, you graciously gave your time, before I spoke at that event so I could learn a little bit more about what was going on in the industry before I got up there and spoke about it. But tell me about your involvement with the association.
Okay. I would be glad to. And I think I'm super glad you brought this up, Jason, because without the involvement that I've had and the friendships that I've formed, I would never have made it to this point in my career. I've got such great mentors and friends. And, that all has come from being involved in associations like CDA
Yeah.
and the Southern.
Southern wholesalers. Yeah.
Yes, we also belong to Wholesale Food Alliance. We're NACS members. We're Virginia Wholesaler members. So all of these different groups, we form great friendships. These are people that actually compete with us in some cases, but
Mm-hmm.
we also talk about business and what we can do better and as an industry and also as independent wholesalers. Everybody has the same challenges, but sometimes we don't approach it the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can have a discussion with someone who's gone through what you're going through currently, and if they've already solved it and you can save yourself a lot of expense and heartache, that's worth a lot when you can have those type of conversations. And so I strongly encourage people, especially young people, to get involved in associations. One of the things that I did right off the bat was get involved, but I also went out and visited those wholesalers that were part of those associations. And I had a lot. I'm not sure they were really happy to see me every time because I had all kinds of questions.
Sure.
But I
Sure.
would sit there and I would make notes and I would observe what they were doing. And I had thoughts in my head about, okay, this would be good to apply at Merchants Grocery Company. And over the years, I collected a lot of those notes. I look back on some of them. I still haven't achieved some of those yet. But at the same time, I have achieved a lot of those and they've helped our company tremendously. And as a team, we've benefited from those relationships.
It's interesting that you say you just kind of brought up a thought about those visits. And I think that, wisdom of our parents, my father and some of his contemporaries in the industry that I grew up in, they encouraged us to go and visit others, go visit each other. And I'm just remembering in my early 20s, I came out to visit out to Roanoke, Virginia, to visit my friend Marshall Jones and his company. And that led to a more than 25-year friendship. And he's my business partner at this point. So, you think about some of those, and I still have wonderful relationships with people that I visited in my 20s. And I love seeing them and I love interacting with them. So I think absolutely that's one of the greatest benefits of those associations and that gathering of different ideas.
No question. It's invaluable. Yes.
So you talked about involvement. Now, were you involved with the leadership of some of these organizations, the board side of it and whatnot?
Yes, I've served on both boards, CDA and also the Southern. And I've also been chairs and co-chairs of different committees, most of which would be education. That's one of the things that interests me the most because I really feel like in some cases there's a lack of education in the industry where people aren't going to school and learning how to be a wholesaler.
No.
And they're not very excited about it
Yeah.
either. We don't have a line of people saying, oh, I want to work for a company that, makes less than 1%. So, the education part really has to come from people in the industry. And we can always have great speakers. We can have great moderators, great webinars and all these things. But with someone who's growing up in the industry, they need also that peer-to-peer and they need mentorship and things like that. So it's always interested me quite a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I'm very passionate about as well. I really, again, from the friendships that I had growing up, I mean, that absolutely helped my career as I've moved on. And, I think encouraging those emerging leaders to gather on a regular basis. I'm very active in, group facilitation, and I really like trying to help facilitate those conversations. Not necessarily tell them what to do, but facilitate the conversation, just help them, help them move along in their discussions. But I would always encourage that involvement early on. And then on the education side, I think that's phenomenal. I mean, that's, this is really where, to your point, not many of us came out of school saying I'm going to, it's a wholesale district. Now, I will say my business partner did go down to A&M for industrial distribution. So, he was one of those very rare, that rare few, although those programs are getting much bigger now. I mean, that's actually, back when you and I went through it, there wasn't that many of them out there.
No, there was no Amazon.
yeah, exactly. Wholesale distribution was best kept secret, until a couple of 3 years ago. So, but I guess, before I let you go, why did you say that, the involvement is for me? I mean, I know you shared a little bit about it, but, originally.
My dad was involved. He was on the boards of different associations and held positions on the boards. And it inspired me to get involved. And just, I saw the value right off the bat because I made friends very quickly. And when you can go see them a couple times a year, and sit down and have a drink or have a meal and have a few discussions. It's just, I can pick up the phone or I can send a text or I can email any of these folks that have been friends of mine for 25 plus years, and they're there. That we all are kind of in this family together of wholesalers, and we try to help each other out. And I think that for anyone who's not involved, I don't know how they get through those moments where they just need someone, to talk to.
And I think you just hit it right there, is that developing the relationships where you can pick up the phone or send them an email and say, hey, man, here's what's going on in my business. I need some help. Yeah. And I think that is just the golden benefit of really that association member, not only membership, but involvement. I mean, I think there's two very different things there. So, and I think, again, when I was growing up, I was always curious as to, okay, well, how does somebody like me get to be a part of that? And I think there feels like this barrier. And I wish this is something that I wish associations would be a little better at, is really reaching out and saying anybody can play. Anybody, not just the legacy people, not just those next generationers that their parents were on the board or their family was, part of the forming of the organization. Everybody gets to play. Anybody can raise their hand.
Yeah, and it's good that you brought that up, Jason, because a lot of the associations have been trying to figure this out for a few years on, okay, how do we engage with someone who comes right in and all these other people have been friends for 10, 15, 30 years, and they feel out of place. They don't feel like they can just walk up and be part of the conversation. At least some of them don't. Yeah. And those are the ones we need to reach. And then there's the ones that aren't even there. They're back at the office. They don't know what the association means and what the groups do and the value of coming to those meetings. Those are the people we're trying to reach and get involved. And we have seen some growth in their younger folks coming into the association meetings, and we're trying very hard to get them engaged. And I think it's something that's definitely have been brought up, and it's a topic. So I feel like we will make progress on that.
Well, I think so. No, and I have a lot of respect for at least CDA that I've spent time with. And, and they are asking those questions. And, the leadership is actually saying, hey, how do we get more people involved in this? So I truly believe that you all will at least progress, not maybe solve it, but at least keep moving forward on this and start bringing new ideas and fresh ideas, especially with you all needing so many new ideas around, technology utilization and different, cost saving measures, as you move forward.
Yeah, different ways of looking at things for sure.
You bet. Well, hey, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Such a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm honored that you asked me to. I really appreciate it. Had fun.
Well, it was a pleasure. And again, thank you for, taking that time earlier, prior to me getting up and speaking at your event. Thank you for, sharing a little bit about what was going on in the industry. And then it was great running into you at the event. So again, thanks for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
You bet.
Take care. I look forward to the next time our paths cross. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider sharing with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast application. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by the brilliant team at the Creative Impostor Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.